Good morning. Thank you for attending today. We really appreciate it. I laughed and told somebody yesterday, I said, I've been watching to see if there are any more avalanches in the Vail area. We have a home up there. And I told somebody, I said, if we have one this week, we'll probably lose 30% of the CEOs in Dallas. You know? And I think about a third of the city is somewhere else, you know, which is great. The traffic's really good. We should enjoy it this week, you know, while we can. But with spring break and the weather, we thank you. Somebody told me this a while ago that they braved sleet and hail getting here this morning. So we'll try and make sure that it's something different when you leave, lightning and floods and stuff, okay? And, but we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you getting out this morning. You know, for those of you who don't know us, Chapman Hex has been around almost 30 years now, and which seems like it was yesterday that I started the firm. My name is Greg Hex. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of the firm today. Our firm does investment banking. We're a CPA firm and we're wealth managers. So we're always looking for audit clients, tax clients. Our client base is usually 20 million to 500 million billion-dollar companies that we're basically working in a number of different areas with them. A lot of them are some kind of sell side or refinance, recap, tax issues, some kind of financial reporting issues, banking issues, you know, that kind of stuff. We work all over the U.S. And in fact, Simon Martin and I, he's the manager of our IB group, also on spring break this week. We were laughing that we have 2 deals going on in North Dakota and South Dakota right now, and we both have resisted making the balmy trip up there to spend any time at those locations. So we're going to wait till things warm up just a little bit before we make that trip. But we don't care where people are and what's going on. We also deal with a lot of international families and family offices. I've got some folks in China again this week visiting with families over there and going to events and stuff, so we do a lot of work around the globe. So if those kinds of questions come up, please let us know. We're delighted this morning to also tell you that we've got your CPE evaluation forms and stuff for you to fill out. If you'd like to get CPE credit, you know, make sure and turn that in. We also have a speaker evaluation form. Fill that out. We're always looking for speakers. Somebody mentioned to me this morning about autonomous vehicles and some of the stuff going on, what impact that was going to have on DFW. We're always looking for topics, speakers, things like that. We're negotiating to get somebody from the bullet train to come and speak in the fall to talk to us about that whole project and where it is and what's going on between Dallas and Houston. You know, as those of us who were born in Texas, we still believe that this is the only country that really matters. It's this country of Texas, you know, and the rest of the country's kind of doing their own thing, but we seem to be holding our own, and so we're interested in seeing what happens and what's going on in Dallas. I want to introduce our speaker this morning. I feel like I'm introducing a personal friend. Rob and I have known each other for over a decade. Our sons went to school together, and we were laughing. I think it's probably closer to 14 or 15 years. We probably met in 2nd grade. We spent a lot of time standing beside various athletic fields and at various sporting events, kid events, school events, and stuff. Rob has kind of always been my go-to guy in terms of recruiting, questions, labor market, that kind of stuff. He spends a lot of time specializing in the high-tech space. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about his background. But I think you'll find it very interesting this morning as he talks about this labor market, what's going on, what's happening in tech, and some of those areas. We appreciate you speaking this morning.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody braving the weather, just like Greg mentioned. You know, I appreciate a few of my friends who came to heckle me as well too.
Wait till Q&A.
But if you do have questions, you know, that are appropriate for the topic I'm covering, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. So, again, thanks, Greg, for the opportunity to lead a discussion around how to effectively compete in a market like this. And I promise you, this market is very tight. There are a couple folks in the recruiting space here. We were just commiserating a few minutes ago on how do you actually compete? How do you get deals across the finish line? In thinking about my presentation and the data that I'm about to share, I thought, this is remarkable. It's positive. In fact, it's breathtakingly positive, given the strength of the overall Dallas economy that has created such a high demand for professional talent virtually across all sectors of our economy. Tight labor in Dallas, tight labor in North Texas is nothing new. In fact, It's the rule rather than the exception. But labor markets this tight, it's extraordinary and can create huge disruptions if not accounted for. A friend of mine says that competing for talent is part of the price of admission to do business in Texas and to build business in Texas. So what I hope to do this morning is explore the factors that drive this market and recommend practical solutions that we can all implement that improve our odds for success. So what are the key factors that are driving this market? First of all, it's a national issue. The number one issue facing American business today is access to qualified labor across all sectors. And Dallas is hit by the same bug. We have a shortfall of 236,000 people across the Metroplex. And that's actually a good number if you compare it to the numbers, 1.3 million in San Francisco, almost 1.3 in New York, a deficit of professional workers. So why is that? Why do we have a deficit of 236,000 professionals in Dallas-Fort Worth? It's a Texas effect. DFW continues to attract Toyota, Liberty Mutual. McKesson just made a big announcement they're moving to the Metroplex. JP Morgan has large operations in Plano and is increasing the size of their operations. Even Jamba Juice moved to Frisco. But we're also blessed with a legacy of a number of Fortune 1000 headquarters in Dallas. Downtown, you've got Co-America, AT&T, JCPenney, Plano. Out in Fort Worth, we've got Burlington Northern, D.R. Horton, and a number of very large private companies that are not technically part of the Fortune 1000. But one of the great strengths of our economy in good times and bad is the diversity of our economy. Good manufacturing strength, good services strength, great retail hub, strong transportation, construction, information services, financial services. But what's our great strength in an average economy, an economy like this, can become something that exacerbates the availability of high quality human capital. And you look at the numbers here, even in manufacturing, the current number is 2.37% in terms of job growth, nationally at 1.87%. My favorite number here, favorite NAICS code, is the natural resources, mining, and construction, 4.42% nationally, but we're at 8.76%, doubling the national average. I think it's rather obvious. If you drive around Dallas-Fort Worth, you see a lot of cranes. You see a lot of construction going on. You see activity in the energy sector. But all of these things, hitting on all cylinders, literally of the 11 topics here, we're positive in every single aspect. And we exceed the national average in 8 out of the 11 topics there. So what you see here is it's a great deal. It's like, hey, you go into New Orleans for the weekend and you say, hey, shoot, it's a short trip. I want to make sure I get my bananas Foster, get my baked Alaska, cherries Jubilee, and eat a few beignets. Then Monday morning you roll in the office and think, oh my God, what happened? I got run over by a truck, But it's great. It's good news. The bananas Foster was great, but too much of a good thing can create a huge demand for human capital. There's also what I call the march of technology. And a few years ago, you looked the topics up there, artificial intelligence, and that was pie in the sky, futuristic stuff that you'd see on Star Trek or Star Wars. But hey, it wasn't a practical solution that was being implemented in businesses on a daily basis. If you go through this list, AI it's not commonplace, but it's being used to execute business strategy every single day. RPA, robotics process automation. If you don't know what that is, you need to figure out what it is, because it's a transformative technology that a lot of businesses can fairly easily implement. We got fintech, a term I just heard the other day, MarTech, cybersecurity of all flavors, blockchain, machine learning, the impact of the semiconductor industry in Dallas-Fort Worth. The defense industry is highly technology driven these days. Look at the Raytheons of the world. Some of the stuff people can't even talk about. But the common thread with this emerging technology is, the thing that makes it go is human capital. That all of these technologies require somebody to administer the system, somebody to develop the software, somebody to make sure that it's optimized appropriately, a system analyst to figure out your unique business processes. And that, for me personally, that's the biggest thing that's driving this professional labor shortage, is the demand for talent, knowledge-based workers that functionally and technically understand all of these topics. And it's not just something in the high-tech sector. Companies as small as McIntosh Search and as big as AT&T, it's a common factor. The things that drives their business is technology, and the thing that drives their technology is the human capacity within their organization. Having the right kind of labor, the right kind of skilled workers to drive their systems and to help them make better decisions. And it's not just business. The nonprofit space, go back to the slide there. You look at here in government, we're 0.52% growth nationally. And I don't know where it is, but over 1% growth, creation of government jobs in Dallas-Fort Worth. The government is highly dependent on information technology and highly dependent on the human capital to support their systems. The nonprofit space, I've got several nonprofit clients, and they're becoming, particularly on the data side, becoming very, very dependent on technology to drive their business, very dependent on technology to communicate with donors, very dependent on technology to make sure that their spend is appropriate. So technology influences everything, but it primarily, the thing that's impactful here is, hey, you're not gonna have a business if you don't have technology. And if you don't have, you need someone to support your systems. You look here, the key occupations in Dallas-Fort Worth, all of them are technology focused. I'm not sure I agree with the DFW median salary. You see $109,000 for a software developer out there. Those numbers are rather generic. One of the things I want to talk about here, a little bit of wage inflation. But typically the numbers, this is a link, I believe this is usually the salary information that's available in the public domain is 12 to 14 months out of date. So that $109,000 for an average software developer, I think it probably rather significantly understates the real cost of hiring a software developer. Emerging jobs, blockchain, machine learning. So in addition to this technology march, North Texas is also, it's friendly. Hey, we all live in Texas because we like folks. I tell a story when my younger son was visiting a college in the Northeast, I spent the weekend with him and I walked around and toured the beautiful campus and looked at the statues and saw the columns. This is gorgeous. I had a map in my hand, and everybody that I crossed, they averted their eyes and looked the other way, and there was no desire to engage. You go to University of Texas, you go to Texas A&M, you go to SMU, and someone's walking around campus with a map. It's a parent, obviously a kid's visiting the school. What's the first thing they do? Sir, can I help you find, what are you looking for, sir? Can I direct you? And Texas A&M, where my two boys go, if you're walking around the map, they say, I need to go to a particular building. They'll escort you to the building. Yeah. And that's one of the great reasons Texas is such a friendly place to do business, It's the people. It's the work ethic. It's the welcoming nature of this great state. And as an extension of that welcoming nature, we have policies, state and local policies, that follow that. So we have a lower tax, lower regulatory burden, and that's very inviting for companies to move to Dallas and for companies to increase their footprint in Dallas-Fort Worth. But the net impact there is that it creates a demand for labor. Also, there are tax incentives that local governments provide to companies moving to the Metroplex. Commercial real estate is 20% below LA and New York, makes it more attractive. And geographically, Dallas-Fort Worth is in a great place, essentially the center of the United States, close to the Gulf of Mexico. A couple-hour flight from the East Coast, couple-hour flight from the West Coast. And we have the transportation logistics infrastructure that's world-class and a regional leader. So all those things combined together create additional demand for human capital. Millennials. If you're like me, you get bombarded with emails every day. How to manage millennials. How to retain your millennial employees. What's different about a millennial? I'm not going to talk about that. But I do think if you're looking at a market, it's important to understand both the supply side implications and the demand side implications. And the interesting thing about a labor market is the supply can say no. We've got a few folks here in the recruiting business here, and I think they understand. I think Clifford just talked about somebody saying no a few minutes ago. Yeah. And it's particularly, with segments of our population, millennials and others, attitudes about work impact the consistent supply of labor. You're going to see throughout the next few slides. Work-life balance is a really important factor to millennials. It's an important factor to me as well, too. But it's particularly important. So when you have a good portion of our workforce and workforce population that are focused on things that 30 years ago we wouldn't have been focused on. 30 years ago, when you worked for IBM, the concept is, I'm going to work for IBM, I'm going to be there for a long, long time. I'm going to retire from IBM. Folks that are entering the workforce today, and millennials, they don't have that same thing. They're thinking, shoot, hopefully this is a great job, and I'm going to commit a good couple of years of my life, but if it's not the right deal, I'm out of there. So these attitudes that impact the availability of supply are important things for us to understand. The other thing that's interesting about this market is we all have alternatives outside of what I call the proper workforce, the traditional labor market, and that offer, in some cases, replacement income that's very flexibly postured. You can drive for Uber or Lyft whenever you want. And if I was in a Uber Sunday morning going to the airport. Of course, on the way to the airport, I got a text that my flight was canceled, so he turned around. But the gentleman that was driving me actually worked for Amazon. I asked him, he was a technical support guy in ERP. I said, how does your income come? He goes, I make more working for Uber. And Uber X. I did not, driving my car. Then I work for Amazon. I work for Amazon because I like the benefits of working for Amazon. So there are opportunities out there, and this impacts the demand side of the equation. There are opportunities out there for folks to not participate in the permanent workforce and earn a similar level of income, and that also influences people's willingness to participate in the labor market. So it's important that we understand that. Next several slides, again, they kind of emphasize concepts like training and development, flexible work hours. Work-life balance is extremely important. Next topic, the Trump tax cut, TCJA. I think that's been a very good thing for the economy nationally. Probably a little bit less so for Dallas because the Dallas job market was so strong, and I think it basically caused the job market to be incrementally overheated. But you see, particularly in manufacturing, even the local Dallas manufacturing numbers, I think, are directly reflective of the tax cuts and the incentive for folks to invest in equipment and inventory. I also think Dallas or Texas and other lower tax states have benefited a bit more than New York and California because of the fact that we were a lower tax state. But one thing that's interesting about investment in equipment and supplies is that's a predictive indicator of future jobs, increased demand for human capital. Again, I think the two huge impacts are manufacturing and growth in lower tax states. This is a 2018 number, but it shows that Dallas is, of the larger economies, the strongest growth job market, with 2.8% growth. Significant job growth and key factors that impact job growth. 2017, we had a population growth of 1.8% and job growth of 3.23%. I think that's pretty demonstrative of the issue. We're growing. We're adding jobs faster than we're adding people. Those are 2018 numbers, and so it looks like the trend continues. At 116,000 jobs in 2018, and there is wage growth. Remarkably, 3.5% unemployment is a remarkable number. Full employment is really about 4%. And you see growth, wage growth, about 3.3%.
Slide back, it showed wage growth previous to that, right there. Wage growth 2017, 498, projected 705. What's that measuring? Big jump.
It is a big jump. Well, obviously, projected wage was what they anticipated, and this slide's a year old. Average wage growth. Yeah. I think it's average wage growth. I mean, there's a few discrepancies in some of these slides here. It's information that we pulled from the public domain. And there is some, depending on what you read and the research you do, they're talking about, hey, is there actually wage growth? I think there is. In the technology market, undoubtedly there's wage growth. I think in finance and accounting, undoubtedly there's wage growth. So I think it is probably an average wage growth, but I can get back to you on that. It just is, it's information that we pulled together from a variety of sources. I'm a headhunter, not an economist, but I will say that it's the trajectory that I'm most concerned about for this particular presentation, and the trend line is from a wage growth standpoint, it's something that we need to be aware of, and particularly in information technology where there is this exacerbated, undersupply and over demand.
Hey, Rob, before you get, can you talk a little bit about the labor participation?
Okay.
And what kind of capacity do we have in Dallas-Fort Worth as it relates to people who are now getting back into the job?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good question. It's a really good question. And I will say that I mean, you look at it's labor participation is going up. As of last week, I think we had the highest participation. I think we have 155 million people that are actively in the labor force. Labor participation number is probably a better number, particularly in bad economic times. It really truly measures, the folks that are unemployed, because the labor participation takes into account folks who've fallen off the job rolls. So in other words, hey, you're on disability, or hey, you've been looking for a job for 24 months, and all of a sudden you fall off the records. Yeah. And labor participation, I don't have a hard number. My gut sense is that labor participation in Dallas-Fort Worth is higher than the national average. And I also have a sense that there's not a lot, I mean, less so than other markets. I think in the Northeast, and particularly the Rust Belt, you have people who've been unemployed literally for going on a decade. They haven't been able to find a job. They haven't retooled their skills. And I think Dallas-Fort Worth, there's less of that. I think the market is dynamic across a number of sectors. You know, so you may have a person that was doing accounting and finance, and they may be working in retail. But I do think that the labor participation rate is particularly high, and I do think it's getting higher because the job market is pulling people that otherwise might not be able to find work into the market. So I don't have a good number for you, but I think labor participation is probably at an all-time high in Dallas-Fort Worth. So what we don't have is people who've been on the sideline for a long time that are being pulled in. That's been happening for the last couple of years. So I don't think there's a deep bench out there for folks who are technically not part of the labor force at this point in time. Does that answer your question? Yeah. And again, hey, this slide here, I think, emphasizes some of the emerging trends. I mean, data analytics, data science, artificial intelligence, you know, those are things that can continue into the future, and it's going to drive a lot of hiring. And quite candidly, those two topics, if you need to spend some time researching, I'm not talking about deep looking into reading technical publications, but reading articles in Forbes about artificial intelligence and how it's impacting business. Because I think it's something that we all need to be educated in. In the recruiting business, artificial intelligence is changing how people actually do the business. You know. What's the silver lining? Resources do exist. Dallas is a large, vibrant marketplace for professionals, and the resources exist. And the resources are top tier. There are really good people out there. It's competitive, but the talent is available. And the other thing about Dallas-Fort Worth professionals, they tend to be resilient, adaptable, trainable, that are focused on, that buy into the mission of a corporation. We also have an excellent farm system. UTD, UTA, the local community college, particularly Collin Community College. They're doing a lot of things in terms of preparing people for the workforce. So we've got a great farm system. DISD has a program where juniors and seniors are interning with local businesses. So there is an opportunity out there, there's an awareness in the community to use the educational resources to get people into the pipeline so we can address future needs. The other thing, Dallas-Fort Worth is an extremely attractive place for recent college grads. I'm not just talking about people who go to Texas or University or Texas A&M or Texas Tech. You know, there are people that are, hey, Dallas is a preferred destination over Atlanta, over Philadelphia, over Memphis and Nashville. It's one of the places people, hey, Dallas is a great place. I can come to Dallas, get on the right career path, have a diversity of opportunities because of the size of the market. But it also, there's an opportunity for me to buy a house, to grow a family. And it's not so economically prohibitive to buy a house like it is in the Northeast or the West Coast, particularly LA and San Francisco. That also impacts, Dallas is a priority destination for people wanting to escape colder weather. Dallas is a high priority destination for folks, migrants from New York, California, and Illinois, escaping the high tax, high regulatory burden in those states. As a matter of fact, from 2011 to 2016, there are 542,000 people that moved from California to the state of Texas. And I think of all the California migrants, 5.5% moved to Dallas. So, you know, the answer is, hey, we're an attractive place. And one of the solutions to attracting high-quality labor is looking outside the Metroplex and encouraging folks to consider Dallas-Fort Worth opportunities. In 2010, California lost over 500,000 jobs, and Texas gained almost 1.1 million jobs. Good story. We've got a great story. Frisco is the growth rate is 8.2%, 11 times faster than the national rate. So we are attracting people. So the good news is that the supply isn't quite sufficient, but their place is a lot worse off than what we are. For those of you who've seen my weekly LinkedIn videos, you know, I'm the guy that likes to make my primary points through analogies. And I like to reference football and military topics frequently. So my topic for this week is TCU football. And I'm not a TCU fan. I've had no one in my family go to TCU. I've got nephews and sons who've gone to every state and every school in the state of Texas except for TCU. One of the remarkable things about TCU football is how they recruit, how they compete for talent in a very competitive market, a small school in Fort Worth that's attracting top talent. And one of the things that I think it speaks to the insight of Coach Patterson to effectively secure talent in a highly competitive market by understanding that they need to take a different approach. And also understands that if you understand your team goals on offense, defense, and special teams, and understand the specific traits, the specific attributes that are needed to achieve a desired result. In other words, aligning your business goals with your recruiting strategy. Coach Patterson's done a great job doing that. The recruit that he may be very interested in is not necessarily the person that's going to be on everybody's radar, but he's going to bring something to the table that they value. For example, you see a lot of high school running backs who have been converted to defensive linemen because TCU values size, athleticism and speed over size. I think it's a good example. One of the things that we need to do when we're struggling to find folks is we need to look at, hey, what are the key attributes that are going to make us successful and not necessarily become so fixated on what everybody else is looking for in the marketplace. The other thing that TCU does is they do an excellent job with communication. They do a good job of selling what their vision is for an individual player. If you come to play for TCU, this is how we imagine that you're going to be utilized. And this is why it's important for you to come to TCU. And I think you find that communication is the cornerstone for great recruiting. It's also the cornerstone and the key factor for retaining employees. So TCU does a great job of identifying talent and talent that may only be attractive to their program, and does an excellent job of communicating, and that communication sustains the commitment of their recruits throughout the 4 or 5 years of their career at TCU. The next example is a military example, something close to my heart, the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is a great example of overachieving in talent acquisition. There are a lot of folks that think that the boot camp experience at Parris Island and San Diego is the factor that differentiates the Marine Corps from the other services. And I think they're partially right. But the thing that gets it all going is recruiting and the priority that they place on proficiency in recruiting, meeting quota year after year. You think we have it hard finding good employees. Meeting quota year after year in a market that's going up, in a job market that's soaring, convincing an 18-year-old, soon-to-be high school graduate to shave his head, dress up like a tree, service country at a third of what they could make in the civilian world. That requires extraordinary leadership, creativity, and powers of persuasion. And the Marine Corps does a great job of training and preparing their best commissioned and non-commissioned officers to participate in recruiting. In fact, the recruiting command is the most selective of all opportunities within the Marine Corps. The Commandant of the Marine Corps says recruiting is the essential operation that most directly impacts force readiness. Similarly, a lot of companies get that. They view recruiting as the dispensable part of their strategy, which requires ongoing participation of their best leaders and their high-achieving employees. They understand that good recruiting is intentional. It's not by accident. Good recruiting is a line activity. It's not an administrative activity. And good recruiting is the gateway to exceptional team building and operational excellence. Human capital is indeed the Marine Corps' critical capability. So what are some practical things that we can do to better compete in this market? Number one, dance with the girl that brung you. My primary message to everybody in this room is identify your high achievers within your organization and do what you need to do to retain them. Communicate, engage, put a plan together to make sure they feel fully integrated into your company's plans. If you are going to initiate a search, know what a good outcome is. Understand by hiring this particular person, this is what we're going to achieve. Don't go into this thing blindly. Hey, I need a controller or I need a senior software engineer. Understand if you hire the right person, this person is going to increase the capabilities of your organization by X, Y, and Z. Know your numbers. Understand the cost of inaction. If you don't fill this particular role, is it going to cost you a customer? Is it going to cost revenue? Is it going to create an impetus for other folks to leave because there's not enough capacity in the organization? Understand return on investment. Have a good understanding. If we hire this particular person, we'll be able to execute this project, and it's going to save our company X dollars a year. Finally, be realistic about the time to fill. Understand how long it's going to take to find the right person for this role. Talking to somebody a few minutes ago, I think it was Dave, it's a frequent thing where we see that they're in recruiting, particularly when you're placing senior level folks. That's a complex sales process from my standpoint, but it's a complex decision from an organizational standpoint, in that you typically have multiple people that are influencers in that decision. It's vitally important that there's congruence in terms of the perspective on a particular job. Frequently, I'll talk to a CFO and a COO, and they think they're identifying the same. One guy's looking at the south window, a guy's looking at the north window, and they think they're looking at the same tree. It's a different tree, completely different tree. So it's vital, not just in terms of the hiring process, but it's vital in terms of the execution of a plan after you've hired a person to make sure that people are on the same sheet of music and that conversation is precisely facilitated. And if there's a disagreement, that disagreement is voiced. The other thing people need to be aware of, recruiting is change, and change can be disruptive. So understand that up front. Talked earlier about the realistic market view, understand dollars and capacity. Diagnostic issue. I encourage my clients, and my better clients have an ability to test drive an employee. They have some type of test, some type of program they run that individual through that forecasts how that person is going to actually contribute once they're an employee. And it's also good because the employee or the future employee can see, hey, if I go to work for company XYZ, this is the kind of thing that I'm going to be able to do. And the folks that don't do a particularly good job of hiring, in many cases, they don't have an ability to effectively screen that candidate aptitudinally, technically, attitudinally, and from a personality standpoint. So develop some type of easy to implement diagnostic that will be predictive of future success of an employee. And lastly, like anything in business, have an executable plan. This slide talks about millennials again. I thought that'd be my last millennial slide, but I guess I lied. But it does talk about engagement as the key to retention of millennials. I do think that engagement is the key to competing in this market, to make sure you retain your key employees. That's one of my primary messages here. The other thing that good companies do that are effective recruiters is they tell their story well. They describe their company's unique competencies in a compelling manner. 2 or 3 sentence elevator pitch that describes how company XYZ is different than everybody else in the market and the value that they add to their clients. That's got to be part of your sell. And it's got to be a compelling part of it. It's because it sells your vision, who you are, and how you're different. Also, be able to describe the future state. Here's where we are today, and this is where we're going. And we're committed to getting to this mountaintop, and these are the resources that we're applying. Because everybody talks about a future state, but the difference is, hey, do you put your money where your mouth is? Connect the dots. Talk about how hiring, when you're recruiting, talk about how this particular position is going to be impactful in the organization, ultimately getting from here to there, and why it's so vital. Recently, Sam and I placed, Sam's in the back row, he's the right-hand guy, we placed the VP of product development. And the CEO of the company described this role, a SaaS-based software company, said, hey, this particular position is the most important position in our company because it's going to do a couple things. It's going to connect, it's going to allow collaboration between software development and account management in a very efficient manner. But it's also going to be the thing that's going to be the revenue driver to get us over a particular threshold of revenue, which is going to be indicative of our success in this particular marketplace. So be able to describe why this role is particularly important. Also be able to describe, hey, our employees are great. These are the initiatives that have organically grown up from our employee base. And these people really enjoy coming to work. They're motivated. They're committed. They like what they're doing. They have a smile on their face. But be able to describe, hey, what your current folks are doing and how well they're doing and how much they love their job. Also, highlight the distinctive aspects of your culture. Values make a big difference. You know, I heard a person say, hey, going to work somewhere where I enjoy working with people and associating with people that share my values as much of a motivator as making money. So make sure you describe that. That's got to be that's got to be real. It's got to be an authentic part of your pitch as you're recruiting. The slide, I think, speaks to it. You know, if there's, as we're recruiting, one of the things that if there's a challenge in front of you, make sure you enunciate that challenge, because that challenge may be the most attractive aspect of your job. I can come in and help you solve the problem. This slide is pretty self-explanatory. The Obama administration say we don't do stupid. And that's what I'm encouraging you all not to do. Don't do stupid. Avoid the bad hire. The bad hire is a person that not only can't do his job, but probably can't do his, he's not so incompetent that you can walk in and terminate him 2 weeks into the job. But he is probably incompetent enough that he's going to suck the life out of the team and reduce the overall production of your organization. But the worst hire This is how hiring impacts retention. The worst hire is the person that's so bad that it encourages your top performers to leave. So consider that. Because a lot of folks, oh, the minimal acceptable skill set. Hey, you don't want to hire the minimal acceptable skill set. You want to hire a person who comes in and adds value to the organization that causes the other folks that they're working with, hey, I love interacting with this guy. I love collaborating with this guy. I love working with him because he raises the standard of our performance within the organization. So look at hiring like that. Don't look at it as just simply doing a job. Look at how he impacts the people in the cubicle next to him. Real cost of a bad hire. This is from the ladders. I'm not sure I entirely agree with the numbers, but it kind of makes my point. You know, there's $500,000 cost from a really bad hire. This factors in some exorbitant legal costs, you know. But I think that the bigger message I have is, hey, the impact of a bad hire on the team and culture. Understand your capabilities. Pretty simple. If you got an average team and you're hiring someone to raise the level of the performance of the team, understand that, because I think that should influence the tenor of your search. If you've got an extraordinary team and they're hitting on all cylinders, and it may be appropriate to hire someone to come in and augment and give additional bandwidth. But make sure that you understand the true nature of your capabilities. And as it relates to talent acquisition, understand what your capabilities are in that area. Again, back to my Marine Corps slide. I don't view recruiting. Recruiting is a line organization. The key to success in recruiting is engaging with your high-achieving employees and allowing them to do their job and sell your opportunity. So when it comes to recruiting, make sure you understand your capabilities, particularly for high-impact roles. And also when it comes to specialty positions, because you may have a great internal recruiting team, but they may not necessarily have a network that's appropriate for a specialty role. Take the mirror test. 5 truths about hiring. I'm just going to share one. Hiring is about culture and team building, intentionally or not. That's really the bottom line right there. Anytime you hire a person, it's going to incrementally improve the culture or the opposite. Culture is the recruiting as product is the marketing. I like how culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Few tricks that you can implement today. Again, this is repetitive. Know your keepers and proactively engage with them. Probably about the 5th time I've said this today. Also, understand the profile of your high achievers and allow that understanding of the profile to influence job description and screening processes during the interview process. Hire for skills, aptitude, and growth over tool set. Being in the technology recruiting business, I frequently get a request, hey, we need a person with a particular version of software. I don't need version 5.5, I need version 5.6. And occasionally, 5.6 is needed because the scope of the activities are so narrowly confined to 1 or 2 particular things. But most frequently, it doesn't matter if it's 5.5 or 5.6 or 4.3 or whatever, what the version of software really doesn't matter. It's the capability of the individual. And quite candidly, that software tool may not matter. It's something that it's the ability for the individual to learn. And you're hiring a person, particularly a permanent hire, you're hiring a person to come in and add value organizationally in a myriad of capacities. So people get wrapped around the axle with things that aren't necessarily predictive of future success. So to the extent that you can, avoid this myopic view of, hey, I need this particular tool set, because I think you'll hire a better person if you take a broader view of what we're actually trying to accomplish by bringing a person on board.
How often will employers take that into account and try to pick the best athlete instead of trying to pick a player for a certain position?
With my clients, I like to think that a majority of them will hire the best athlete. because that's what I try to encourage them to do. One of the things that I do is, is the requirements gathering part of the recruiting process is extremely important for me. I'll go out and talk to them about needs and wants, and again, hey, if you hire a particular person, what is this individual going to achieve, and develop a roadmap for the recruiting process. And in that, I'll prioritize, hey, all the attributes that are important for success. And if the person says, hey, I need version 5.6 versus 5.5, I'm going to make sure I have a good understanding of why that's particularly important. But I do think that that is what happens frequently, is they get that folks, particularly, they're not comfortable with the subject matter that they're recruiting. They'll get very focused on keywords and versions of software and that sort of thing. And recruiting is not. I mean, recruiting has kind of devolved with the internet to being an alignment of keywords on a job description and an alignment of keywords on a resume, and that's not it at all. I mean, it can be an informative factor as you're evaluating resumes, but it's a much deeper process than that. So I'd like to think that with my clients that doesn't happen frequently, but it is something you need to guard against. And that's why it's also really important to make sure that all the principles in a hiring process are on the same sheet of music, where there's a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish by hiring a person, so you tend to be less focused around minute attributes that aren't all that important. Another concept is, hey, I call it the evergreen concept. If there's a profile that you frequently need to hire, keep an eye on for that profile continuously, so you're not in a panic when a person leaves. So you've got a strong bench, and it may mean, hey, we all live with world budgets, and hey, I love this guy. He'd be a perfect member of our team. I just don't have budget. But hey, that still doesn't mean you can't keep in touch with them and stay engaged with them when the next position opens up. But the evergreen concept's really good, and it also allows you to compete in this highly charged market. Hey, I'm looking to continuously look out for these guys. And the last thing is, in this market, if you've identified the right person, move forward. Move forward with a reasonable sense of urgency. Not panic, but communicate to the person, hey, I really like this. This interview went really, really well. Our interest is not just passing. We've got some committed interest. Describe the next steps and move forward. We don't have the luxury in this market of, hey, this is a really good interview. Give me a couple weeks and let me determine what next steps are. In recruiting processes, you need a well-defined, executable plan where, hey, if interview 1 goes well, what is interview 2? So be prepared. I'd like to open up,
Well, we're just going to open it up for a couple of questions, and they're going to pass out some information too on the McIntosh firm and stuff, so that everybody gets something. A couple of questions. Rob's going to be around for a few minutes too. Well, one other thing we want to do today. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We, as most of you know, are typically a nonprofit, and today we have Carissa Powdrell here from the Communities Council. She's one of their managing directors, and she's going to talk just very quickly for a few minutes about their organization for 3 or 4 minutes here. And one of the things I really like about them is I love their mantra, which is moving families forward and leaving poverty behind. And in Dallas, we have such a hurdle. It's easy for a lot of us that, we have the clothes, we have the homes, we have the cars, we have the ability, but there's thousands of people here in this city that are struggling every day just to put food on the table and make it all work. And so I want Carissa just to talk just a minute about what they're doing and their impact.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hicks. Thank you this morning. I won't hold you. My name is Carissa Powdrell with Community Council of Greater Dallas. I'm so glad I get to piggyback off of what Mr. McIntosh spoke about in many points of our workforce development. Community Council is a 79-year-old organization, really is a secret in our community. We focus on economic mobility programs such as Skill Quest, which we send individuals to college for free in the Collin County District and the Dallas County Community College District. We are partners with them, and we're sending families to whole family care. We have wraparound services for our families that come in. So not only are we paying bills, we're putting people to work. We're training them. We're giving them educations. We also house 211. And let me go back. Our 3 pillars of service is community wellness, community matters, and community works. One of our biggest initiative in the community is I Get Kids Fixed. It's at the Fair Park. This year it will be partnered with the mayor's walkathon initiative. Last year we had 4,300 families to come out and participate. We also have a community youth development program in our 75216, 75217 area code, and our Opportunity One. Again, it goes back into our workforce development where we actually host a virtual job fair. So we're putting individuals to work without the transportation piece of it. So we're reducing barriers in our economic mobility, and your support is needed. Again, we're 79 years old, approaching our 80th year anniversary, and we would really love for you to go to our website, see where your business and your company can help with volunteers, to come in, take a tour. A little nervous here, but we just really could use your help in looking at our programs and participating in our Community Matters, Community Wellness, and Community Works programs. And I'll pass out some information to you, not to hold you too long this morning. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks again for attending today. We have 2 more spring events. We have one, we're actually going to move the date in April up earlier in the month, and then we have one in May also, so we're going to fill out the spring. We'll send you out some information in the next few days about topics, but those we're going to be moving. We're expecting a larger crowd with some of the topics that we're coming up with. So for the next couple of different events, we're going to be moving back over to Prestonwood Country Club, over at the Creeks Course, over here to Rapido and Preston, the club over there, to have those events. So you make sure, watch, the location's going to change on you for a couple months, just to make sure we have plenty of seating space. Again, thank you so much. For coming, turning your CP evaluation forms, stick around, network a little while. There's still some breakfast and stuff out there. Chris will be here, Rob will be here. We really appreciate you, and thanks so much for attending. Have a great day.